Good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Jesse Bailey. Today, we're going to be talking about masks and jabs. Now, there's a lot of angles that we can take when we talk about this, but tonight I want to talk about the biblical aspect of it. A lot of talk about the efficacy of the vaccine, about the masks and how effective they are in preventing. We're going to put all that aside tonight, just all the different stats and data that's out there, which again yields some interesting results. But tonight I want to take a look at it from a different perspective. Why not just wear a mask and get the jab? Why not just do that? That's certainly the easier route. And that's ultimately what the goal is to wear us down to the point where you just do it because you're tired of hearing about it. You're tired of, getting your job threatened. I mean, people's jobs are being threatened now. Schools are kicking kids out because they don't want to wear a mask. LAUSD has, of course, in the last few days now mandated it, effective in November at some point. So we're being forced to take these jabs in order to live. But there's an element to this that is spiritual and unseen. And I want to draw a parallel today between Jesus' temptation in Matthew chapter 4 and what we're seeing right now. Now, what we're seeing is in no way apples to apples what Jesus went through in the Mount of Temptation and what we're seeing. But there is an underlying principle that is absolutely the same. And I want you to stick with me as we take a look at this tonight. So I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your thoughts on this. But for now, just bear with me. And I want to go to the book of Matthew. On the Mount of Temptation, Jesus was brought into the wilderness by the Holy Spirit. And there he was tempted by the devil. Now, as we all know, a temptation is simply an invitation to sin against God. That's what a temptation is, an invitation to sin against God. The temptation itself is not sin. It's when we accept the invitation that it becomes sin. So Jesus, being tempted, has an invitation from the devil to do something that is contrary to the will of God. And I want to look at these three temptations that were offered to Jesus by Satan and see if we can draw some similarities and stand on the same principle for what we're seeing going on in the world right now. So let's go real quick to Matthew chapter 4, verse 3. Matthew chapter 4, verse 3. And it says, "Now when the tempter came to him, he said, 'If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread.'" Now, if you think about it, why is that a temptation at all? To turn stone to bread. I mean, after all, didn't Jesus do great miracles anyway, surrounding bread and transforming one object into another? He turned water into wine. Why can't he turn stone into bread? He multiplied the fishes and the loaves to feed the 5,000, and he did it again to feed the 4,000. So what is the temptation here to sin when Jesus already did these or was going to do these miracles? As a matter of fact, his first miracle was to turn water into wine. So why was this a temptation? There's nothing in the scriptures that says that you cannot turn stone to bread. Obviously, he did it with water to wine, right? So what was the temptation here? Let's get to that in just a moment. But I just as proof, John 2, 7 and 9 says, Jesus said to them, "Fill these water pots with water," and they filled them to the brim. And then he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom. So Jesus refused to turn stone into bread, even though he was going to turn water into wine. So why was it a temptation? Let's take a look at the second temptation. It says, "Then the devil took him up into the holy city, set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, 'If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone.'" So Satan brings Jesus on top of the temple, which is the center of culture there, and says, throw yourself down. The angels will pick you up and you'll fly around and everybody will see you and they'll be in awe of that. But Jesus refuses to do that. But he did something very similar later on, something he was going to do anyway. Look in Acts chapter 1, verses 9 and 11. Now, when he had spoken these things, while they watched, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by in white apparel, who also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. So again, why was it a temptation for Jesus to throw himself off the temple and then be caught up by the angels when we already see that that's something that he did? He was caught up and brought into the clouds in front of the disciples. And they were in such awe over it that God had to send angels to say, hey, gentlemen, go do what he told you to do. Where's the temptation in that? The temptation lies in the third one. And here it is. Again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, Go away with you, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. What was the real temptation through all three of these? It wasn't a sin to turn stone to bread. It wasn't a sin for him to be caught up. But the last one reveals what the true sin was. The true sin was obedience. And that's the principle that we're looking at here. You know, it's not about wearing a mask. I've worn masks when I've done work doing drywall or up in an attic working around fiberglass. I wear masks and I've worn them for extended period of time in tremendous heat. It's not so much about the vaccines, even though I personally believe that the Bible teaches and have some principles on why we shouldn't get a vaccine and why that would be contrary to God's plan and will for our life. But many people have gotten vaccines. If you have to go on missions trip to Africa, you have to get a vaccine, and many people have done that. So why the big fuss about masks and jabs right now? It's because of this underlying feeling that it's not about our safety, it's about obedience. See, if Jesus would have obeyed Satan, Satan would have owned him. Because the Bible talks in John chapter 8 about whom you obey being your father. See, that's the ultimate goal here, is obey. Wear the mask, obey me. Get the jab, obey me. It's all about obedience and ultimately worship. What? Worshiping the beast, the world system. That's what this is about for us as Christians. And that's why so many Christians are discerning that something's not right. From the beginning, there's been a stirring in our hearts that something's not right here. There's something that goes beyond what we're seeing with just our eyes and what they're telling us. That there's an attempt to draw in our obedience so that we will do whatever they ask us to do. And all of this is just a precursor to the mark of the beast, the world system that says that you cannot operate without getting X, Y, and Z. And this is just an opportune moment. COVID is the opportune moment needed in order to bring greater obedience to the world system. Look at what Luke's account of Jesus' time on the Mount of Temptation says. It says, Now when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from him until an opportune time. COVID is an opportune time for the world system, whose God is the devil, to come in and try and draw obedience from not just the world, but from those who call on the name of the Lord. This is why it's such an important thing for us to know what's going on in the world right now and understand the signs and seasons. And if you think that's far-fetched, there are steps being taken around the world right now to completely capture people's obedience and make them bow down to the idol of the world, the system of the world. Right now, let me show you this clip of Daniel Andrews. Daniel Andrews is the premier of the state of Victoria in Australia. And if you haven't been watching what's going on with Australia, it is outrageous. They're on full military lockdown, even though there's only a few hundred cases that are popping up around this nation of over 25 million people. They are not allowed to go outside of 5 kilometers from their house. They are not allowed to be outside during certain periods. They're doing things like giving extra hours outside if you get the vaccine. It is absolutely ludicrous. And this is for a virus that has a 99.9% recovery rate on this. And these are the steps that are taken. Listen to what he says here in this clip about the steps they're going to be taking in the future.
Situation where, to protect the health system, we've got everybody locked down. We're going to move to a situation where, to protect the health system, we're going to lock out people who are not vaccinated and can be. If you're making the choice not to get vaccinated, then you're making the wrong choice.
Okay, time out. Let's listen to what he just said. He said, so we're going to instead of locking down, we're going to lock out people who don't get the jab from the medical system. That means if you decided not to be vaccinated, you are not going to be treated. That has already happened here in California and around this nation. We have doctors who are refusing to see patients who have not been vaccinated, even though we see the efficacy of the vaccine dropping. And all you got to do is look at what's going on in Israel, which is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, to know what's really going on. And I'll kind of leave it at that. Just check out what's going on in Israel. So they're going to lock out people from the medical care system. So if you don't get a vaccine, we're not going to see you. If you break your arm, if you have, some internal stuff going on, and there's already, and I've heard from many nurses that are in the hospitals, that there is absolutely an attitude of disdain in the medical community for anyone who's chosen to not get the vaccine. So let's continue. Let's continue with what Premier Andrews' idea of a good economy is.
You're making the wrong choice. And for safety's sake, and back to that point about how much work our nurses have to do, as this becomes absolutely a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and we open...
Pause right there. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. What about the Boston, Massachusetts study that showed that 74% of the people who got COVID were actually vaccinated? That is a real study. Let's continue.
Everything up. It's not going to be safe for people who are not vaccinated to be roaming around the place spreading the virus.
Well, studies now show that even if you are vaccinated, you can still pass along COVID-19. So it's not about just the unvaxxed.
That's what they'll be doing. So there's every reason to get vaccinated. And there are appointments available, and there'll be even more appointments available throughout September, October, November. Let's get to those thresholds as fast as we possibly can. But yes, there's going to be a vaccinated economy, and you get to participate in that if you are vaccinated. Now, that's not right now because, of course, there's many more people who want to get vaccinated than we actually can get through the system. But we're going to get to a point where everybody who can get vaccinated will have been offered the chance to do so. And we are not going to have a situation, well, at least not in Victoria, where we lock the whole place down to protect people who won't protect themselves.
There you have it. A vaxxed economy is the term being coined by not just Daniel Andrews, but all of Australia now is adopting this idea of a vaxxed economy. And don't think for one moment that that's not going to spread. Remember, the mark of the beast, when you receive it, you'll be able to participate in the world's economy. If you do not receive the mark of the beast, you will not be able to work, buy, or sell anything. So while I have hesitation to believe that this vaccine is in and of itself the mark of the beast, it is absolutely the step before. This is why mask and jab is a big deal. So family, I just want to encourage you, keep your eyes on Jesus, look for the signs of the seasons, and make sure that you're reading the Bible more than you're watching the news. God bless you all. Until I see you next time, keep it bold, keep it balanced, and keep it biblical. See you next time on The Bridge.